In this segment, we're going to be talking about a very interesting concept. Empathy sounds beautiful until you actually feel what the others are carrying. And to stay open to the world means accepting both its joy and its pain. In this segment, we'll explore empathy not as an emotion, but as a calling, a path that asks us to move beyond ourselves, see through another person's eyes, and discover that our greatest contribution often grows out of the deepest wounds. So what can you tell us about empathy? And I like this part because you were mentioning, that empathy is not something easy, but something hard. So what can you explain us about this, Johnny?
Yeah, I mean, as someone who, identifies very much as strongly empathic, I mean, my whole life, I don't think I've ever been able to stand in a room with someone and not understand, or at least start to understand, kind of what they were feeling and just what they're going through. Um, and it's something that, as I've grown and learned what it is, what empathy is, and like kind of what it does, it's been something that I feel like I've tried to wield. Like it's like it is
Okay.
a tool that, you some people are born with it and it's strong, and some people have to work at it, but it's a tool that you have that allows you to connect with another person in a very unique way. I mean, there are millions of ways to connect all day long, but when you
Okay.
connect with someone through empathy, empathy is to understand that other side, and it takes effort and it takes sacrifice, but it also means that when you open that give and take channel, um, you're changing the relationship with that person. It's no longer two people like this. It's a little bit more like
Yeah.
that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Uh, and I know I'm all over the place with that explanation, but obviously
No, 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 no. It's
it's a
interesting. I
complex
like it.
concept.
Yeah. 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 But you're doing a great job. So yeah, yeah. And I'm gonna jump in a little bit later, but yeah, continue. So it's complex, right?
Yeah. So I mean, for me, it's something that every day I try to choose to engage that, not to go super tangential, but just like to keep the reference very narrow. In the movie that the I think it's The Time Traveler's Wife, but this man who can travel through time, it's a British guy. He uses time travel to get the girl. That's the whole movie. And by the end of the movie, he gets the girl, and the movie you think it's done. And what this sat with me so hard was the very end of this movie. After he gets the girl, he explains that he still uses his time traveling closet every day. At the end of the day, he gets back in the closet and starts his day over. And they show you the difference between the first day and the second day. And then the first day, he walks through the day and he goes about things and he pays for his newspaper and he does his job and everything. And in the second day, he goes through that, and every interaction he has with another person, he takes that 1 second to look up, to make eye contact with them, to give them a smile,
Okay.
have a walk with them. That to me is the purest form of empathy because it's not transactional. It's you're doing that sort of thing. You're pausing to give another person your time and your attention and honor them with that for that brief moment for no reason other than it might benefit them and it might not. They might not even look back at you, but sometimes they do and sometimes it means a lot. And I've had those moments my whole life where like every once in a while you have that second where you're like, "Oh wow, that really meant something that I stopped and had that conversation with that person." I'm gonna get, like, emotional, but
No, 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 no. I like this. I
because
like this. But I
that's
can
life.
really relate. No, but
That
I
that
can I can really relate to this and what you're saying, and I can also say that I'm a very empathic person. And yes, and I like the word that you used. It's the tool. This is I'm going to quote you, but I'm going to go to the word that you used. But it's a tool that allows you to connect with another person in a unique way. So I like the word that you said, unique, and this is very particular because you can relate to people and you can be polite and you can be, friendly,
yeah.
but to have empathy, to make that unique connection, you need to really understand, and it goes beyond just words. It's and I think you'll understand, what I'm trying to say. It goes beyond words, and it's just, the body language,
Yeah.
just the vibe. I mean, if we're
Right.
gonna,
Right. 100%.
it's the vibe.
And it's
Yeah.
it's, it's I talk about how, like, my whole life I can be in a room with someone, another feeling, and I realize, like, when that connection is open and strong, whether it's because of one person or both people or whatever, it is two-way, because I know that when I'm in a room, I watch how my energy affects other
Yeah.
people. And that empathy is something you can open, and when you open it, if you're open to it as a person who has empathy and you connect with someone else through it, you're kind of opening that faucet 1 degree, and that person, it's up to them whether they're going to continue to open that faucet. But um it's something that can be activated. That's the best word. It can be activated in other people, which is kind of the point. It's kind of like sparks, like spreading. That's what we want.
Yeah, yeah, I can understand what you're saying, and yes, when you genuinely, and this has to be, and this is a key word, I think, when you genuinely express and that interest and that service to other people, and that empathy, when it's really genuine, like you said, it opens up the person's capability and realizes that something, there's a vibe that moves in there. There was, and I'm going to give you this example. One thing that I read in your ancient book that really marked me is called the Circuit of God. The God's love, and it says that the way that the love, I mean, it's all very complex, but the way that you return the love of God, the one that He gives to you, it's not like a one directional, you're giving it back. The way that you give it back, it's like a circuit, like positive and negative, that you have to connect the both. To
Yep.
start a light bulb, you have the battery over here, but you have to make the circuit,
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. It's
And the
a
thing is,
flow of energy. It's not a
exactly.
path.
And the way it returns is by serving and by loving others, loving your brethren. That's how that love that God gave you goes back. And you may have other love. So I really love that, and when and this is maybe what's happening, we're creating those connections that, a certain flow starts to go through,
I mean,
right?
we are designed, in my opinion, or maybe in science's opinion. I'll go out on a limb and say that, but we are designed to function like that. Human beings, it's. I think it goes without saying, human beings do better when they work together. I mean, over the
Definitely.
course of time, war is not what has accomplished great things. War has stopped bad things and everything like that, but when great things have been accomplished, it's because of cooperation. It's because of batons being passed and people understanding one another. And it's like, even if you look at the way that insects work together,
Yeah.
an insect's hive, it's easy to dismiss that as simple because it's bugs and it's bees and it's honey and whatever. But
And it
the way
happens, right? It just happens.
yeah, the way exactly. It's just there. It's just part of it. But it is a miracle the way that a hive and a hive mind functions, the way that all these different organisms
Yeah.
know exactly what to do and how to work with each other. And you look at bees, and are they communicating? Well, they're not having conversations, they're not writing each other letters, but they're constantly communicating. If you watch a nature special about bees, it's like every movement of a leg or a
Yeah.
wing
Yeah.
flap or a sound they make, and again, they're not making these things to say something to someone. They are communicating actively and outwardly. And it's up to all the other organisms to receive that communication and do what they want with it. And when that's happening, everybody's passing this energy and these messages back and forth. And that is what makes a hive mind work. And we're capable of doing that as people. Usually in history, we've done it through some kind of more awful ways like slavery, ways like industry, ways that kind of don't respect the natural order of things. But we're also capable of, when we work together, when we do connect on a bit more of this hippy dippy vibe energy way, we are capable of incredible things. And it all goes back, to bring it back. It all starts with empathy, with opening that channel, like you said, opening that both sides of the battery, the positive and the negative, and letting that flow kind of happen all over the place.
Yeah. Yeah. I like the example that you gave of the hive, and how each bee is a unit, but together it's the mind hive. I like that.
Yeah.
I like that because it's an autonomous aggregate of the smaller units, and this is what really is humanity as well. And what I teach about in the Solki, in the Mayan archetypes, and I call it the human matrix pattern, is because we are another unit, as individuals, but together as a collective, we also have this, and it's just
Exactly.
different. It's more complex,
Sure.
maybe a
Sure.
bee is was this complexity, but in our case, we have mind and we have spirit. So imagine the level of complexity we're throwing into that, the dimensions we're throwing into that, and
Yeah.
the more cooperative we have to be in that in that sense, right?
Yeah. 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 A much more complicated machine to operate than the bees.
uh, Going beyond ourselves, and you're talking about this pain, and I can also relate to this. It's a typical or the classical when you see somebody cry that you begin to cry, you feel that
Yeah.
that emotion.
Emotional contagion. Yeah.
Exactly, exactly.
Yeah.
So tell us a little bit more about this contagion, because it's really interesting the way that this happens. What's your take on it?
I mean, it's interesting. I've done, a like very small bit of reading and research about it because it really is fascinating to me. It's the same thing with a yawn. It's the same thing. You see somebody yawn and it makes you yawn and you don't understand.
Yeah,
But, you know, I think that we've discovered as humans all these different waves in the air, right? Radio waves and ultraviolet waves and all the different things that are flying through the air. And we've learned how to harness some of them and everything like that. But, I believe honestly, beyond just the fantasy of my book, I believe as a person that, there's a whole lot more going on flying through the air between us and each other, between us and the sun, between us and plants, whatever. Um, and I think when you talk about emotional contagion and that ability to feel that. It's like, when people talk about how if you're in a room, you can feel somebody watching you and you turn
yeah.
around, there's actually somebody there. There's no explanation for that other than the fact that some other organism is directing energy at you and you are receiving it. Whether you can articulate how or why is irrelevant. You're receiving that energy. So the
It's
emotional
like hunches. It's when you get a hunch, it's the
yeah,
same thing.
intuition, exactly. We are armed with so many more mechanisms than we know how to use, We
Yeah.
don't have a manual for ourselves, for our
That we can
souls.
understand, rather, not even use, we can understand what's happening. Yeah, I
Yeah,
totally
yeah,
agree.
it's like we bought something from Home Depot and we just threw away the manual. We're just gonna figure it out.
Or
But
we just use 10% of the
yeah,
capabilities of
yeah,
the tool,
exactly,
right?
exactly. The other 90% is doing rad stuff, but we'll just never know. So yeah, but I think that emotional contagion, that feeling of sadness, that, seeing another person in pain and wanting to cry, like that's a very natural thing. But if you stop and think about it, that's incredible. It's incredible that your whole natural psychological state can be so violently sometimes affected by a visual trigger, an instantaneous visual trigger. Um, and so, yeah, so I think that comes down to the fact that all the things inside of us that are receiving signals are in tune to all the things outside of us that are sending signals. And we just,
Yeah.
it's up to us to try to turn on as much as we can, whenever we can, because that's how you get the good stuff. That's how you get the info, right?
Yeah. I'm going to tell you a personal story of the earthquake of 2017, which, I mean, it's personal because, both the most devastating earthquakes of Mexico City happened on the anniversary of my birthday. So it's an interesting, there's
Interesting
actually
moment.
interesting
Yeah, for sure.
coincidence. We'll talk about that a little bit later, but it was a very interesting day because at first it was all chaos. You have the earthquake, everything's falling, buildings falling and chaos everywhere. But once I got my family safe, we were out, kids were coming out of school, and they were safe at the home of a friend from school as well, but nothing happened to her house. Our house or our apartment really was damaged. But once they were safe, there was a calling for me to go outside and do something, and everybody was in the street. There was like this was, a war zone. It was like
Yeah,
chaos
yeah,
everywhere. And you
yeah.
go and in the end I ended up with like a platoon of guys, and they were saying, "Oh, the building fell over here," and then you go over there and you go and there was a need. And the next day, there was the restaurants were preparing meals and the people taking out the debris or yeah, all the broken down stuff, and I was taking food to them. So instinctively you get into that mood. So I can't express it, but through that tragedy we came close. And
Yeah,
that goes throughout all human history. How that
yeah,
those moments of struggle of that's where heroes come out,
yeah.
right?
Yeah, I mean, I love the expression that, you don't judge a person by how they are during the best of times when things are easy. You judge a person's true character by when the chips are down and when you're in the middle of a disaster, and those
Yeah.
are those defining moments. And you talk about the faucet being open, or the connection being open of empathy, and you're in a situation like that. Um, you're just completely open. There's nothing closed, and you're, like you said, you're just running and responding. You're in your most natural state, just acting and not overthinking, and just being there for
Yeah.
whatever is needed. That's which is the way that we were designed to be. Before society created all the distractions that we have, that was our job, was to just be somewhere and respond to what was there. Get food, go to sleep, protect family, all these simple
Be
things. And
present. Be present.
be present. Yeah.
It's
Your
amazing
simplest
nowadays.
form is that.
I see it when I ride the subway. I like. I mean, I use music, but but I really don't like just staring at the screen. But nowadays you see people just connected in their own world and just really
Yeah.
disconnected, and they don't even they can even fall or whatnot. But that's the world where we're living. And
Yeah.
anyways, I think that's gonna change someday somehow, and I think that's really like
Yeah.
anything. It's really polarizing and showing us darkness and shadow and light. Sorry, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure.
So before we go into the last segment, any closing ideas on empathy or anything that we missed that you might want to include to for our audience?
Yeah, I guess just it's worth always, I think it's always worth, kind of in any situation, taking a moment to pause and turn that empathy on, and just seeing what it gives you back, because it changes our interactions. It changes the interactions of our day. It changes the way you get home at the end of the day, and how much more meaning you can add to your life by, I think, if empathy is something that you don't feel you experience a lot, to try to open it in a weird way.
Awesome. I like that. I'm gonna throw in a commercial here, and the reason why I always close this podcast with Carpe Diem is exactly that. If you seize the day, which
Yeah.
is Carpe Diem, if you make everything out of it and make every interaction that you have the best out of it, for even the smallest things, then you get everything. You go home and to bed, with something accomplished. So that's really very powerful. So thanks for that. Thanks for that tip, which is really
Yeah.
important.
Hey, happy to help.
On the Divine Within podcast, we'll share real conversations to help you find a personal connection with God. My goal is to support your faith, growth, and journey toward discovering the divine within yourself. Join us to deepen your faith and spiritual journey.